Maybe you feel like you're already giving it all you've got. You look around and things are tough out there. You, our listeners and readers and viewers and users across the country and across the world, you are demanding more examples of fight and progress you can actually see and touch and feel. And in these conversations, in this series, in partnership with our very best friends at Run for Something, we're going to give you exactly what you asked for. Each of these episodes features 2 guests, both sourced from the Run for Something pipeline and graduating classes, the next generation of leaders. So basically people younger than me, which is, it's a low bar. Anyways, in each episode, first I'll introduce one young elected official at the state or local level who's made real measurable progress on an issue facing more Americans than ever before. And then in the same episode, in a later conversation, I'll introduce a bright-eyed candidate currently running for a state legislature or senate, governor, mayor, city council, or school board, who is similarly hellbent on attacking the same issue in their own hometown or state. And look, for all you know, one of these could end up being yours, or it might be something you can learn from. Because you and I will find out together what they're working on and why, and where they've made progress, and where they've struggled, and how their exact tactics and strategies and blueprints or whatever can be transferred to other schools and towns and cities and states across the country. So look, if these conversations inspire you, I would love for you to do 2 things when we're done. Because to be clear, it's not these people's job to save us. After you listen, it's your turn. Number 1, find out what office you or some young person you respect can run for at runforwhat.net. And that's in partnership with our friends at Run for Something. And number 2, you can find and support with your money or your body incredible candidates endorsed by Run for Something and other incredible organizations we respect and work with at whatcanido.earth. And last, number 3, because yes, there's always 3, please share these conversations. Lord knows if you need this and I need this, which is why I'm doing it, many, many more people need this. First up today, our topic, gun control. Yeah, as the Onion posts once a month, there's no way to prevent this, says only nation where this regularly happens. But there are ways to prevent it. Not just school shootings or homicides or suicides or even accidental shootings in the home when a gun and ammo aren't stored safely or even fucking stored at all. We just need people in office who aren't cowards because we know what works. And it's a lot of different pieces like everything else we talk about here. And we have to keep chipping away at all of them everywhere we can, at the national level, at the state and local levels, at corporate levels, whatever, wherever we can. Because the way this country is constructed, from federalism on down, it's a complex beast, right? Elections are complicated, education funding, gun control. And so, again, are these myriad examples of municipalities and county boards, and some places you get superpowered mayors, and others, mayors who are kind of like a first among equals type of thing from city council. But there's always something those folks can do. And there's always something you can do, always. And my 2 guests today are absolutely meeting the moment. Introducing our incumbent, Missouri State Legislator Ray Reed. Endorsed by Run for Something in 2024, Ray Reed was in the news just this week for a bold sit-in protest, refusing to leave the floor of the Missouri House for over 100 hours after Republicans there attempted to convene a special session and push through redrawn legislative maps at the behest of Donald Trump. Ray is a St. Louis native, and he brings a wealth of experience in Missouri politics, having collaborated with notable Democratic leaders like former Governor Jay Nixon and Senator Claire McCaskill. Next, I'll talk to our candidate, Jazz Hampton. Jazz is running for mayor of Minneapolis because he loves the city. It's not just where he lives, it is who he is. He is not only a lifelong Twin Cities resident and a husband there, he's the father of 3 Minneapolis public school students. He has been an attorney there, an educator there, and a social justice entrepreneur. He has freed the wrongfully convicted. He has worked on advanced affordable housing, protected civil rights, and created safer communities. Now he's ready to bring fresh leadership and unite Minneapolis after a hell of a decade. So there we go. two amazing humans fighting for gun control in very different places in the only nation where this regularly happens. Let's find out what it means for their hometowns and yours. My first guest today is Missouri State House member Ray Reed. Ray's had a busy few weeks for sure. Ray, introduce yourself for the people.
Hey guys, I am Ray Reed, born and raised here in the suburbs of St. Louis, representing Missouri's 83rd House District that encompasses the communities of Brentwood, Maplewood, Richland Heights, Shrewsbury, Afton, and I'm so happy to be here today.
Awesome. These 30-minute things are very new to me, Ray. Usually I get to just kind of go off however necessary for an hour, but I don't want to abuse your time. So we're going to try to keep it semi-focused here. We're going to talk a little bit about gun control today, because obviously that is a thing affecting everybody everywhere at this point, whether you've been directly exposed to it or not, wherever you live. It's hard to miss, whether you got kids in schools, doesn't matter. It's ever present. And obviously Missouri's got a lot going on there. Let's talk about you for a moment here. Why did you run for office?
I guess this goes back to shortly after President Biden won in 2020. I sat at a bonfire in a backyard with a bunch of friends. It's kind of a Missouri thing, I guess, in the fall time, just backyard bonfires. And we just talked about the issues we care about. We care about reproductive freedom. We care about the environment. We care about making sure that college is more affordable. And of course, to make sure, that when folks get out of school, they're walking into an economy that works for everyone and not just the wealthy. And we decided, well, why not me? Why not someone like me who represents their communities in more ways than one? And what motivated me to run for this race in particular was that I had this just strong feeling of what my presence in that Capitol building could mean for young people. I always wanted folks to see themselves in their government every day I walk into that building. So that's really what motivates me, is the idea that just a young kid can see themselves in their government, and that makes this entire thing worth it.
I love that. How do we get all your other friends who are around the bonfire to run as well? It sounds like they're in. Like, what do we have to do?
Everyone has a role to play, and I'm so glad all my friends are plugging in their own special ways to find their roles.
Hell yeah, man. That is it. No matter how you prefer to show up, there's things we got for you to do, for sure. Well, we appreciate you stepping up and doing that. And it does really matter that folks can see themselves in office, literally at any level. But man, the state and local levels, of which there are myriad, matter more than ever, 100%. So you're endorsed by Run for Something in 2024. How are they helpful to you?
Oh, it gave such just credibility to the Upstart campaign. I had run for office in 2022 for Congress, and Run for Something does amazing work on the ground. So I couldn't get their endorsement then, but it meant the world to have their endorsement when I ran in 2024, because they give you the tools you need to succeed on the ground. They can connect you with community leaders. They can give you just the campaign how-tos to run an effective ground game for your campaign. For someone who's just walking into running for office, Run for Something will give you everything that you didn't even know you needed. And they're such a blessing.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it really is. Whether you are someone like contributing from afar and contribute to this campaign, great. What does that mean? Or if you're someone who's running, or a new campaign manager who's never been a campaign manager involved, like you said, the unknowns are far larger than the knowns, where you go, oh, yeah, I guess someone does have to do this, right? We do have to cover these bases. So it's definitely helpful to have that sort of like a starter pack, right? People who, this is what they do all day, is they get new folks going. That's awesome. All right. I want to talk about gun control, obviously broadly in the US. I don't really have to say much more, but if I can just set the table, and please correct me everywhere I'm wrong here, for where Missouri stands right now, which seems pretty similar to most of the adjacent states. So permitless carry for almost 10 years now. Stand your ground was expanded, I think, in the same bill. You don't have to retreat when you're in a place. No red flag log, no universal background checks, no safe storage rules. Localities can't do much because there's pretty heavy state preemption, which Virginia's got a fair amount of that as well. But again, that's not too different from Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, folks like that. And as everybody knows, well, maybe everybody doesn't know at this point, but I think 28 states, 29 states, something like that, now allow permitless concealed carry. So definitely not alone in that. It's not a trend anyone's excited about. Well, not anyone who listens to this show is excited about. But talk to me about, you've been in office a year now. Obviously, there's a hell of a lot going on. How is that part of your platform and your work? And how are you finding your way into it?
Yeah. So The very first bill I introduced was a bill to reverse every single one of those horrible gun safety policies you just brought up. This is a fire I've carried with me since 2016. That's how I got my political start, was in the governor's office after my freshman year of college. And this Missouri Senate overruled his veto. It was the last Democratic governor of Missouri, Governor Jay Nixon. The Missouri Senate, then run by Republicans, overruled his veto. Senate Bill 656, it allowed the state of Missouri to have all those terrible laws. So I've carried this fight with me for a long time, because I walk into that building with a perspective that almost no one else in that building has. I'm a member of the school shooter generation. I had to learn active shooter drills before I even learned how to read. It's just perspective that no one else in that building has. And I've carried that fight throughout my first year in the Capitol. No surprise, the speaker and members on the other side of the aisle do everything they can to not hear that conversation and to shut us down if we ever want to talk about gun safety. But it's an important conversation to keep pushing it. And I am fully committed to making sure that folks who look like me and folks who don't look like me throughout the state of Missouri are no longer subjected to gun violence every single day throughout our state. That's why I always wear, our Moms Demand Action bands and gun safety is BRAT every single day.
I love it, man. Moms Demand does great work. You introduced this bill trying to wipe all this stuff up. It's a uphill climb, to say the least. Did you have any allies up front, or anyone you could rely on, those type of advocacy groups and or other folks in the House, to even try to get it rolling?
And this is kind of where it comes in. There are cowards on the other side of the aisle, because privately they'll tell you. I think that as long as you're not taking my gun away, we can definitely do more around safety and guns. So I'm like, okay, so you'll co-sponsor my bill, or you'll speak on the House floor. And they said, oh no, I can't do that, because then the gun craze will come after me in my own party, and then I'll lose my job. And then you'll get someone crazier in office. So it's just frustrating, because it's like, stand for what you believe in. If you believe that kids shouldn't be shot in schools, if you believe that guns shouldn't be firing off at all times of night and in the inner cities, then do something. But unfortunately, it's just me and my Democratic colleagues who stand for gun safety in that building. And it's a real shame. That's why we need more people to run for office.
That's right. If they're not going to vote for it, kick them out. Let's put more people in who will. What, if any, were sort of the more positive outcomes, even if it's lesson learned, from trying to introduce that bill and from talking to those folks and finding out who's a coward and who is not, even if that is pretty lopsided? Like, how does that affect your ability to legislate going forward with either this bill or versions of it, or broken up, or anything else?
It gives me something tangible to bring back to the people, because we have so many amazing advocates and lobbyists and young people who just come to the Capitol every session who lobby for safer gun regulations. And getting caught trying is something Democrats haven't always done. But it's the getting caught trying to push policies that make a real difference in people's lives, that we can go back to our voters and say, look, we are the party that stands for gun safety or reproductive freedom or any other topic that actually helps people on the ground. And that's what's made the biggest difference, is showing them that we are doing something and then turning that energy into support for Democrats in the next election.
Right. I mean, you can at least get people to go on the record. If you get them to go on the record and say, yeah, I'm going to vote against this, it's something, right? It might not flip the whole house, but it is something. And every time, again, a classroom gets shot up or anywhere, that's another stain on that record. Again, the states adjacent to Missouri, sort of surrounding it philosophically and geographically, are similar. So I'm curious if you look at other states that are trying to do similar things to at least start to chip away at, if not permitless carry, then safe storage. If not red flag, then ammo, right? Where are you able to find real measurable inspiration or blueprints from some of these other places that maybe could apply in Missouri in round two?
The state of Illinois, our neighbors to the east of us here in Missouri, have done just amazing work in their legislature. A friend of mine, Rep. Nabila Syed, also a Run for Something alum, who's a fierce advocate for gun control. And when we see, of course, you're never going to solve the entire issue with just one bill. But if you can take the number of gun-related deaths from, say, 5,000 down to 4,000, That's 1,000 families throughout our communities who don't have to suffer the burden that comes with losing a loved one to gun violence. We can make real, meaningful changes in our communities one step at a time, but only if we have leaders with the courage and backbone to fight for these issues.
I appreciate that. We often tell folks where we can learn from the past, whether obstacles we never got past or got over, or successes, however incremental they might have been, throwing sort of the kitchen sink variety pack at these huge issues that are very complicated is often how we make a lot of progress. And we always come back to, and you're probably too young for this, I'm 1,000, but you know, all of the crazy efforts around smoking. It's like, what we had to do on the legal and marketing and social fronts and packaging and all this in the court cases to make any progress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like even something as simple as seatbelt laws.
Mhm.
When my mom was my age, there were really bad auto fatality rates. But what the government did was take a look at the issue and treat it like a public health issue. And they implemented seatbelt laws, regulation on how cars and safety standards were met. We changed the way that we designed roads so cars were less likely to bank. When you treat something like the public health issue it is, you can drastically lower the number of deaths caused by that issue.
Yeah.
And we need to do the same thing related to guns.
Yeah. Everyone's going to be affected by it at some point, directly or semi-directly. I mean, we're all obviously affected by it in so many different ways at this point. Looking at some of those other states, and I'm not sure if, a year in, obviously you've been organizing for a while, but if you've got similar allies, friends, acquaintances in some of these other places, again, looking at Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, having gone through the fire once on this now and rebuilding, what would you say to them as folks like yourself in those houses are trying to make similar efforts?
Community is everything. And after Donald Trump won, I didn't have marching orders for people, but I did tell them, find your community and build your community, because that's community is going to be what gets us through this awful administration. And
Yeah.
I would just tell them, find your community, find like-minded people who agree with you on these issues, and then organize. Grab some friends, grab some clipboards, knock on doors, and talk to your neighbors about these issues, especially gun control.
For sure. Who are your allies, again, either just spiritually or really helping with on the ground and organizing stuff? Mom's Demand, who else are you actually interacting with and you feel like you can rely on?
There are really great groups here in the St. Louis region, like Moms Demand Action, the St. Louis ARC, who helps with our disability issues and safety around that. You have Missouri Hospital Association, who's been all in on safety standards throughout our communities, and groups like NEA, teachers who don't want to have to deal with kids who are going through anxiety. I had one teacher tell me about this young girl who told her she was afraid to go to the bathroom because she thought someone might shoot her. This is something that's seeping through our community, and we have to address it.
It makes me so angry. I've got 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, and they're privileged. They're fine. They're doing the same drills from Virginia. Who knows? It's so easy for folks to say, my parents, for instance, were, ridiculous, hiding under their desks because of Cold War, potential nuke stuff. But first of all, desks not going to do a lot for you in that situation. But I get you got to do something. But those kids weren't watching nukes happen every week. They weren't connected to it. They didn't see live streams. They didn't see videos and texts that kids were making from other classrooms, even just for drills. And it's a whole different ballgame. The level of day-to-day trauma when you haven't even been exposed to it yourself, you haven't even had a shooter in your building, is, nothing else that such a broad populace has even faced. Obviously, in this country, we do cruelty very well. Black people, immigrants, you name it, that is what our history is. But again, the way in every single state, cowards have shown up for work to not protect children is a choice. And kids are more aware of that choice than ever before, to the point where, like you said, you got some young girl who doesn't want to go to the bathroom. And why should she?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the time for us to do something is long past. Like I said, even if we can lower the number by 1,000, we are saving 1,000 families from heartache, and that'll be worth it.
Yeah. All right. I'm not going to let you go without talking about, you were in the news a little bit past couple weeks here. You were part of a sit-in protest. You didn't leave the floor of the Missouri House for 80 hours. Is that right? I would have to.
123.
Oh, 123, because of basically everybody is attempting to gerrymander this week, essentially, redrawing districts, which if like you had told AP government me, like this is how it was going to go down 25 years ago, it's crazy to watch this happen live. Talk to me about how you got to that point and what the latest is there, because obviously this is pretty fucking important.
Yeah. This is why it's so important, the work that Run for Something is doing, because they recruit young progressive candidates who aren't afraid to stand up to the status quo. It's no coincidence that 2 of the 3 members, myself, Representative Geraldine, we are the 2 youngest Democrats in the House chamber with Gen Z. And we just kind of looked around and saw that there needed to be a fight. So why not us? We were here for a moment like this where, inspired by the sit-in of the 1960s and diners during the Civil Rights Movement, we decided to sit in, knowing the fight ahead of us was monumental, but we could bring attention to what was going on right here in Missouri. And I got to give some thanks to a lot of friends in the Democratic Party who really wrapped their arms around us. Amanda Lemon's one of them, Vice President Kamala Harris, former Congresswoman Cori Bush, DNC Chairman Ken Martin, former DNC Chairman Jamie Harrison. All were helping us throughout that entire 5-day span to help us get the message out of what was going on right here in Missouri. But yeah, we just looked around and decided, let's bring attention to this. And this is why younger people in office is so important, because we used new ways people are consuming media to get that message out on the House floor. We were doing TikTok lives and Instagram lives from the House floor, just breaking through to people's feeds to let them know what was going on. And we brought a lot of awareness. The day after the sit-in, we held what I think is the largest demonstration in the Missouri Capitol's history, flooded the Capitol with tons of people from around our state to, energize the crowd. And then we turned that energy into mobilization. And now in Missouri, we have something called the citizen referendum, where if we collect 108,000 signatures across the entire state, we can put that map on the 2026 ballot. And that's exactly what we're doing right now, is that we're mobilizing folks to be involved in our civic process. If you were inspired by what we've done on the House floor, it's now your turn to take up the baton and do your part as a citizen to help collect signatures, organize signature signed events, just putting your name on a signature, and then voting for this referendum in 2026.
I love when you were describing that moment where you guys kind of looked around and said, I think there's got to be a fight, and I think it's us. Again, our job is really, we try to help people answer this question, right? As like rigorously as we can with these really researched, whether it's policy at whatever level, or charitable, or candidates, or you name it, anywhere in the world. And I have these interesting conversations sometimes with wealthier folks offline, usually, or they reply to things and they go, great, I'm keeping up with it. Now, whether they want to do this, is this going to move the needle? And I can only do this much or whatever. And one of my, I find more effective questions back to people, go, what can I do? And then kind of go, I don't know if I'm comfortable doing this or this. And it's kind of like door knocking, as I'm sure you're aware, because you got elected. The best version of door knocking is not knocking on the door and telling people all about your campaign. It's asking them what they give a shit about and finding a connection point. Boy, did that make door knocking so much easier when I started to figure out how to do that. But I'd like to go back to these people and go, like, why did you write back to me? Like, why did you call me? What is the thing that you really, why are you here? What did you give a shit about that you felt the need to subscribe or listen or donate, whatever it is? And I'll let them tell the story again. And I try to just say, because look where we are, man. I just say, okay, what are you going to do about it? What is your time here for? What is your wealth for? Or your position in whatever company, or as a freshman member of the Missouri, what was the point? What was the point? What are we doing here? And if they're still wavering, I'm like, I don't have time. I got other folks I can help. But I love that you guys were like, I guess it's us, because what the fuck else are we doing? What are we here for? Like, what is the point, right? If you can bring 5,000 lives down to 4,999 lives, like that's a kid. That's one kid.
That's absolutely right. For a long time, folks looked at the Democratic Party and said, they always tuck their tails and run. And it's refreshing to see that there are young Democrats who are now picking up that baton and showing some fight. And again, everyone in our party has a role to play. Definitely admire and have deep respect for the generations that came before us. But I think there was a little signal that, hey, we are ready to continue and carry forward the good fight that you guys started. So we are so grateful to be in this fight, and we're not going away anytime soon.
Fuck yeah, man. What is next on your docket? Again, obviously, the redistricting is a huge thing. Anything else specific? I have a crazy calendar of when every state house meets. It's the most insane thing you've ever seen, but I don't have it in front of me. So what is pressing for you right now?
I have to talk about my baby legislation. House Bill 811 last year. It'll be reintroduced again next year. Let me backtrack. Right after I was elected, my lovely wife, Natalia, showed me your Instagram. And again, just new ways people are consuming news and media. She showed me the story of this girl named Alondra, who lives 30 minutes away from my district, but did everything you expect a young person to do. She came here as a child. She has DACA status, but she worked her way through school, helps her family, helps them pay the bills. After nursing school, when it came time for her to get her nursing license, the state of Missouri said, you are paying your taxes, you're a stand-up citizen. That's all great. But because you're a DACA recipient, we are not going to license you to be a nurse. While we have a nursing shortage in the state of Missouri.
Everywhere.
So when right. So when Natalia showed me the story, I said, this is why I ran for office. I see a problem. Let me do something about it. So my bill, which would just change a few lines in our state statutes, would allow DACA recipients not just to be nurses, but contractors, teachers, any professional licensed job in our state. And the most shameful part of this last session is that we have a Speaker of the House who is the first person of color to be the Speaker of the House in the state of Missouri, the only person of color on their side of the aisle. And he is a doctor. He is a doctor. And he stopped this bill in its tracks, did not even send it to committee, wouldn't even let us have a hearing on the bill until the very last day of session. He sent it to a committee because the Constitution requires our speaker to send every bill to committee. So he ran the clock out. And you better believe the bill will be back next year, and we will have a lot more advocates in the building advocating for them to. You say you want to address immigration, here's an opportunity for the state level to do it.
Again, I spend so much of my day just fucking furious. Has so many layers. Incredible. I love that you were we're going to fix that. Because you're right. It's crazy. What are you doing keeping more nurses out? This is completely nuts. Whether you're in a hospital, in a doctor's office, childcare, NICU, elderly care, it doesn't matter. We're short 50,000. It's crazy. It's crazy.
That's exactly right. Because when you go to a hospital, you don't see the doctor. It's nurses that you see the entire time. And let me be clear. To the south of us is the state of Arkansas. Ruby Red Republican Arkansas passed this bill in 2021. So here we are in 2025, and Missouri Republicans are so obsessed with who can be more MAGA and who can be more awful to immigrants. They won't even have a conversation about this bill, and we'll sit you down on the House floor if you dare to talk about it.
Man, I'm so fired up for this. Awesome. I'm in. Let's do it. Virginia is working on pieces of that. I know college here, Old Dominion University, ODU, just recently said, I guess they're going to try to graduate 2 classes a year. It's not a huge nursing school, but they're we have to do something. We don't have enough, and they got to come here, and the demand is crazy for it on both sides of the markets. But we also have a very shitty governor, but he's got about 2 weeks left before he kick his ass out. So
until we get Abigail's command burger in there.
Yes.
I can't wait. I'll be there Saturday. I can't wait.
Where are you gonna be on Saturday?
Norfolk, Virginia, to do a rally and knock on some doors.
That's 20 minutes away. Oh wait, you're not showing up the big guy, are you?
I'll see you guys Saturday.
Okay. All right. Okay. We can talk about that later. This is fantastic. All right. Last 2 questions. What's a book you'd recommend to folks? You got any time at all?
107 Days by Kamala Harris.
Okay. I have not had a chance to do it yet. I'm stoked. I've heard it doesn't pull any punches, which is great. And last one, what's a playlist you can't get enough of right now?
I've been listening to a lot of country. Jason Aldean. How to do country. Even guys some old school country, like Conway Twitty.
All right.
I've been really getting into some country playlists. Great music.
Have you messed around with Charlie Crockett at all?
Mm-mm.
Oh, this guy's incredible. Check him out. He is so old school. He was just a concert up here in Richmond a few weeks ago, this new amphitheater. Guy's amazing. Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, the old stuff is great. Ray, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we'll connect on all these bills and fighting the good fight, man. I'm so thankful to have you down there. Keep it up. My second guest today is Jazz Hampton, who's running for the mayor of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jazz, tell us about yourself. Why are you running?
Thanks for having me. And I'm running for what is happening in Minneapolis. It feels like it's happening in a lot of places, which is our city leadership, which is our mayor's office and our 13-member city council, have been at odds for several years now, arguing back and forth. And the irony is all of them are Democrats. But the gridlock has prevented us from making any progress that we should have made around public safety, especially after the tragedy of George Floyd, which happened here 5 years ago, around economic development within the city. It feels like everyone's downtown was a little dormant after COVID,
Sure.
but ours also had the compounding effect of George Floyd happening here and so many more things. When it comes to our school system, we're really far behind. 45% of the students that live in the city do not go to our public schools. And if you're a Black student, you only have a 60% chance of graduating high school in 4 years. And then we win all of the superlatives, like the best parks and all of these things, but so many folks are left behind in the conversation. And so really, I'm running to break the gridlock and to move our city forward on a lot of these really important topics.
I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your candor about it and pointing out, again, we're in like the Gilded Age here, which, I don't say in a celebratory way. You've got, Mayo Clinic is relatively down the block. And like you said, but if you're a Black kid, the odds are you're probably not going to graduate, which is just not ideal.
We have a lot of work to do, but thankfully, we have a lot of people that want to help. It's just we have to figure out how to do it. And
Well, listen, I understand the city council mayor fighting with each other. I was in Los Angeles for 15 years. I mean, it's guys, what?
Jesus.
Anyways, talk to me, Jazz, for a moment. How'd you get hooked up with our good friends at Run for Something?
I've actually been a fan of the organization for quite some time and watching all of the success that has been born out of it. And I think, it isn't just happenstance or timing. I think it was meant to be that the type of campaign we're running is directly in line with what they're doing as well. Listen, I don't think, early 30s feels young anymore, but in this political space, it is. And the fact that we can have folks to step into this space and say, hey, the old guard that has been here, and they've been here for a long time, and they've been doing really important work. We're ready for you all to pass the baton on to the next group that can carry, this work forward. I deeply believe in it. And it's funny, locally, we have a retired mayor. He's the only mayor to have ever had 3 terms in the city of Minneapolis. And he's kind of like our local Barack Obama. Everyone still loves him. And his name's RT. And I did an interview with him recently. And one of the things he said was when he was the young or youngish mayor, everyone was like, the old guard struggled to let go. And he's like, when I got to that place, I didn't want to be that person. And so having that conversation with him is even aligned with Run for Something and with this campaign where it is, it's time for some fresh leadership and to turn into a new chapter. And that's what we're going to do here in Minneapolis.
I love that. Thank you again for your candor about it. It's easy for places. I mean, Jazz, I live in Colonial Williamsburg. Like, we're holding on to a lot of shit here. And, we've got a weird city council mayor thing and the way everything works. But I get both sides of it, right? I don't know what your relationship with your parents are, if they're still around. But it's really interesting growing up and becoming a human. You're in your early 30s, but especially this phase and later when you realize, 1, they're people, and 2, I have the opportunity to either parent like them or not at all like them or mix and match where it's appropriate. And the whole time you're just like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And it's really hard not to do that. But that's applicable too in politics, right? Because as everybody always says, and Lord knows Barack Obama learned this, like, it is much more fun to campaign than it is to govern.
Oh
and
my
you get in
goodness.
and you realize why some of the things are the way they are. Not to say we can't improve on them at every level, but easier said than done.
I couldn't agree with you more. And my parents are still around, and my mom and dad live not too far away from me here in our house. And they've been very supportive during this race. But you're exactly right. And now, I'm also a father of 3 children. My wife and I have 3 kids. So we have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old. And so this applies to parenting and to governing from my viewpoint, where it's just like, you see what worked really well and you see what didn't, and you try to augment and base it off of that. Here's another really important one that we don't talk about enough. You try not to overcorrect. My dad was a military guy and he was a strict dad. And I appreciate it. It made me who I am today. But I didn't want to overcorrect and be like the ultra lenient parent as well. I'm trying to find that middle ground. And that's what we're trying to do in this political space as well. And here's the other thing that people sometimes miss. It's not in politics. It's not just policy. It's also leadership style. Something I've been saying a lot in this campaign is, listen, if 2 different politicians had the same playbook, it doesn't mean you're going to execute it the same way. It doesn't mean how you implement the plays and the people you assign into specific positions on the field are going to be in the right places. There's also a big part of leadership that is a part of this conversation too.
It is, because you can have the greatest playbook and, sheets and sheets of policy and pay-fors and you name it. But if you don't have the basics of interest in public speaking or small talk or one-on-one and all of these things, then it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, but you got to be willing to do that. So you decided you're willing to do that. When did you decide you were going to run and why? And then how did you explain that to your wife?
I'm sitting at the place where I finally asked her with all the courage in my heart, but it's a little bit of a longer story. But, my background is I was a corporate lawyer. I started as a public defender while in law school, and then I was a corporate lawyer for 5 years. And then after the tragedy of George Floyd, the precursor to this conversation, I had a difficult conversation where I said, Courtney, my wife, Courtney, I think I'm going to quit my corporate law job the year before I make partner to start a company to address these interactions like George Floyd's and to de-escalate them and make them safer. And I'm going to start that business with two buddies from college. And she was like, you're on my insurance anyways. Go ahead. And so she encouraged me to do it. I've been running that business now for the last 5 years. It's called Turn Signal. It connects drivers to an attorney on a video call instantly when they've been pulled over within 15 seconds. We serve over
incredible.
200,000 people across the country. It's an employee benefit at Fortune 5 companies all the way down to startups and to hospital systems. And that was building a solution when I saw a need. I've successfully represented individuals that were wrongfully incarcerated for 19 years through the Great North Innocence Project as a pro bono attorney. Whenever I see an issue and I think that I can address it, I try to step up and to do that. And that's what I've seen in the city of Minneapolis, this gridlock. It feels like we just needed someone to step up and say, listen, I can be the adult in the room. And yeah, we have a portion of our city council that's more Democratic, moderate, I'm using their words, and another portion that is DSA endorsed and more progressive. And here's the thing, we have 13 wards in our city. You're supposed to have different types of leaderships across those wards because one of our wards is over 90% immigrants or folks from another country, and another one is extremely affluent, and the vast majority of the residents there are white, and they have different needs and they ask for different things. You should have different leadership. That's the point of democracy. And it's the mayor's job in this moment to distill all of that down into policy that can move our city forward. And that's what I believe I could bring into that. And so when I asked my wife, I said, hey, remember the last conversation we had where I wanted to quit my job? I have another one. And my wife is incredible. I can hear her in there on a Zoom call right now. She works incredibly hard in her career. And she said, I have a stable career that can keep us afloat. You can take this risk and do it because what we need you to do for people is bigger than working at US Bank or Target. So go do that. And so she's incredibly supportive. Now, don't get me wrong. I've come home a few late nights on this campaign trail where she was like, what did I do? But we're both really excited about the decision.
It sounds like we're married to the same person. And never been more grateful for anything in my entire life. It's ridiculous. Don't deserve it. All the things. But that's amazing. Well, first off, thanks to your wife, Courtney. Thank you, Courtney.
That's right.
That's fucking awesome, man. You got 3 public school kids. Is that right?
That's right.
That's what
I
I'm
will be
talking
the
about.
first mayor in 25 years to have children in the public school system in the city of Minneapolis. So it's important.
That's a place to start. Okay, great. That's a perfect place to start. I imagine your kids do shooter drills like mine do.
Yep.
Have they talked to you about them?
Yeah, for sure. And then for those that aren't super familiar with the Midwest or with where we live, the Annunciation shooting, the most recent one, was in this city. It was at a school that I was a 5th grade basketball coach for. Annunciation is the feeder school to the school that I went to. So it's just like really direct and real here. And my kids, I remember, sorry, I hijacked the question, but my daughter she's in 3rd grade. And I remember she came to me and was like, so what happened? Why were you there? Why were all the ambulances going there? And she's an age where I didn't know. It kind of reminds me of Santa Claus in the way of I want to tell her, but I don't want to lie, but I don't want her to go to school and hear from someone else. And so navigating that conversation when it was happening here was just very real, for sure.
It's a hard one to answer. My kids are all public school kids, 10, 11, 12, ridiculous human beings, but I would do anything for them, and they're very privileged and they're fine. But again, with a lot of privilege, it's easy to say like it's a level playing field for school shootings at this point.
Yeah.
Everybody's exposed one way or another. And obviously, again, you guys just had something very heartbreaking. We're in the NRA's backyard and have our own complexities as far as rules go. But my kids will come home after a drill and you can tell it affects them. But at the same time, the hard part is they'll tell me about it. And I'll immediately not tune out. That's not the word I want to use, but go into like my darkest, angriest place while they're telling me the rest of it, which is like that they made up a game while they were hiding in the closet or this or that.
Yeah.
And I don't know much more to say to them other than, I'm really sorry you had to do that.
I feel the same way. And as I was saying earlier, the reason I'm running is because I want to try to address things. And it's so funny, we receive questions about this on the city level and what are you going to do? And the thing that I always refer to is, listen, if you would have told me in 2015 or 2012, from a legal perspective, as a lawyer and as a former adjunct professor of law, the things that Donald Trump has done legally or that has gotten approval from the Supreme Court and other courts on down, I would have never believed you.
No.
Yeah, I would have bet my mortgage on Roe v. Wade couldn't be overturned by a Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right. And so watching all of those things play out, I had a real change of heart recently, maybe the last 5 years, where I very much so was like, we're playing basketball and they're following us. And we look to the ref and like, what are you doing? Like, you got to call that. And the ref's like, nope, that wasn't a foul. And we are playing the exact same basketball that we've always played when really we should be operating under different rules now and playing the same level of intensity that clearly is within the bounds of the rules. And we didn't think it was. And so there's a lot of unique and specific things I think we should do around gun laws, specifically. Again, not to nerd out on this, but a city cannot change gun laws because in Minnesota, you are preempted, you're prevented from doing that.
So let's pause there. We're going to nerd out. That's literally the point of this. Let's nerd out on this right now. So tell me, because you got preemption laws in Minnesota like Virginia does a lot of places. Talk to me about what you can do.
First of all, speaking of nerding out about this, my undergrad is also in computer science before I went to law school. I made a website, pleasedosomething.org, and I just made it and put my entire thesis out there. And I sent it to local legislatures to say, do something now. And here's what my ideal is. When we talk about large capacity magazines, when we talk about assault weapons, whoever's in the comments, don't get me started on defining it. We can get to the definition if you really want. When we talk about those things, we can ban them in the city of Minneapolis. And you're right, there's preemption in Minnesota, just like Roe v. Wade preempted more strict abortion laws. But guess what those states did? They put trigger laws on the books. So as soon as Roe v. Wade was removed, that it instantly would go into place. And that's the same thing we should be doing around gun laws, high capacity magazines, or assault rifles, and safe storage laws. For goodness sakes, in the city of Minneapolis, the rate of suicide that goes up if there are available and open guns in a home is also unacceptable. The fact that we can't put laws on the books to say store a weapon safer is also unfathomable. We should put those trigger laws into place in the city of Minneapolis yesterday. And then guess what? When you go to the state legislature to fight for preemption to be removed, you know what they're going to say? Oh, well, even if we removed it, your city would argue about it and you couldn't decide on a law. And you say, nope, it's already on the books. We already agreed it's already there. You're the only one preempting it. And then their next argument will be, oh, well, we can't just remove it across the state. All of these cities will have different laws. Great. Leave preemption and carve the city of Minneapolis out, or any other city that raises their hand and say, we want to be carved out as well. Keep it, say all cities are preempted except for Minneapolis. We're ready to do it right now. And then put the pressure on from that way. Listen, I've had a million conversations about this. We can't do everything in the world, but I'm running for mayor. And that's what I can and should do right now. And that's what we should be doing across the country. And if 18 cities in the state of Minnesota do that, and they're the right ones, it'll probably cover the vast majority of our population. Mm-hmm. That's what we can and should be doing right now on the city level. And frankly, waiting any longer, I think, is unacceptable.
I love all that. I also bought a URL at one point, and I haven't used it yet, but it's coming. It's vaccinateyourfuckingkids.science. So we'll get there. Yours is a little more. You could probably put it on a bumper sticker. Mine is question marks. That is what we can do, right? Is go, okay, I can't do shit about the actual preemption right now because I'm not running for state Congress. I'm not running for governor. And that is not a fix unto itself, right? Yep. Because those things are so complicated. Federalism. But you can look at what you're able to do and then go, what is the power I need to hold in order to make progress on that? Knowing I've got a bunch of nincompoop Democrats who don't agree on stuff to go, should children be able to be shot in schools? No. Should people be able to have full access? What is it? Sorry, I've been going deep on this. Is it a misdemeanor for storage?
Yeah, especially when the weapon is then used, when it's not being stored properly.
Negligent storage and accessible to a child. Gross misdemeanor. What are we doing here? But like you said, you can look at it and go, I can't do everything about everywhere. I can run for this city, the biggest city, and I can check off a pretty big box here, and I can save lives.
And here's the thing. It's so funny. It feels like it's not worth playing a game of inches until it's being played against you.
Oh, yeah.
And we have been worn away so much in the last 6, 8 years, and then you feel it. But we aren't willing to do the hard work, the erosive work that sometimes has to be done, and we should.
Well, I love the idea of the reverse trigger laws because I think after you shout at people to invest in state and local races for long enough, and then all of a sudden, like you said, Roe v. Wade and all these laws, some of which were like 100 years old, kick in overnight.
Yep.
And you say to people, this is why state races matter,
Yep.
because this has just been a ticking time bomb that most people who live there didn't even know about. And now it's a crime on both sides of an abortion, right? It's a nightmare. So great. How do we reverse engineer that? How do we take advantage of this stuff? Because if we can't do shit on the federal level and the state level is what it is, what can we do to protect these people and say, we have this in writing, you know?
Yeah. And frankly, that's why you run for local office. Like you were saying, this is why we should be doing it and why it's incredibly important. And then also, maybe one day you will be at a bigger stage where you can do
Sure.
bigger and better things, but do whatever you can where you can.
So who are your allies on the ground in the city for this particular issue, at least? Advocacy groups, other people on the city council, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, Moms Demand Action is doing really great work in the city of Minneapolis to push forward for, some realistic common sense gun law reform on the state level. I think we have a lot of support within the city council as well that's willing to move things forward. But at the end of the day, all of those seats are up, 1 week from today. And so we might have a completely different city council and mayor, obviously, I hope, in our city too. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to come together immediately when we're all sworn in January to start doing this work. And again, this shouldn't be anything that any of us are arguing about. We're all Democrats within the city, and it's our job to push this law forward.
I had a conversation with Amanda Littman a couple months ago. It was like her 4th time on the show, something like that. And what I love is that she gives zero shits about pulling any punches about anything. And, one of the things we have to come to terms with is that a lot of the institutions and guardrails, formal and informal, at any level that you and I grew up with, like you said, call it the Overton window, whatever you want,
Yeah.
all right, they're gone. And you have to
Yeah.
say that to yourself and to other people out loud, right? There's this great scientist, Catherine Hayhoe, says the number one thing you can do about climate change is talk about it. And the number one thing we really have to start conversations with is say, these things are gone now. They're ashes. What are we doing to build something better and new when we get our chance again? Which requires a lot of young folks, and I'm calling you a young person here because I'm 1,000, decide to run for office and do get elected to councils and state legislatures and mayors and school boards, whatever it might be, to say, well, all we have is an opportunity to do something different because that's it. We don't have these old things to rely on. We don't have, the number of anti-public health laws that are on the books or coming up in the next year. We're starting over. How do we look at that? Say it, come to terms with it, and make an opportunity out of it.
And the thing is, we struggle to admit that, I shouldn't say we, everyone collectively does not admit that the biggest scandal that we were talking about when Barack was in office was like brown suits or reaching over the window at Chipotle. And now, like, those are the most laughable gaffes or issues that would happen within the White House. And so to even have the starting point of the discussion, I think we always held the moral high ground as Democrats. We're always going to do the right thing. But we have to realize that, like, what is determined to be the right thing or acceptable is wildly different now. And if we don't say that out loud and acknowledge that, I think that we're only doing ourselves a disservice.
There's a lot of stuff, right? Ever since companies are people and any amount of money. I mean, Virginia, we have no campaign finance laws, like zero. It's a nightmare. But we got to take back the House in a more real way and elect these amazing people next week to the top 3 spots. So we have to play by those rules, and we'll take fucking money from anybody to win, because AOC said after the last election, we cannot just be right. We have to be effective. And to us, again, like, we call out good guys and bad guys. And to be effective, you have to be in office, and you have to be in office for an extended period of time, or your policy doesn't mean shit because it's just going to be reversed in 1,000 different ways. So we have to play by those rules. But again, we also have to understand, like you said, Democrats from different places and representing these wildly different districts, we're fighting for basics at this point, right? Basic public health stuff, basic education stuff, basic funding, basic fucking SNAP in 3 days.
Right.
The ability for people to get food from somewhere, right?
Yep.
They're looking for, traces of abortion pills in the water. And it's like, we're fighting for the basics here. So
Yes.
as we like to say, fortunately and unfortunately, there's a lot more people who give a shit than ever before from a lot of different flavors, because here we are.
Yeah,
So I'm glad that you have these allies, and nothing is going to be easy in the state and complicated and all that. But looking at, what will I have power over when I come to term that I can actually do something about this, whether it's immediate or it's now lying in wait for hopefully a better state legislature.
that's right. That's right.
What does your sort of soonest measurable positive outcome look like to you? Where do you feel like I can make incremental progress on this thing? Like you said, it is a game of inches, to quote Al Pacino.
Yeah. I literally watched that speech yesterday.
It's
That's so
amazing.
funny.
It's so ridiculous and it's so amazing.
Yeah, like it's just corny enough to be okay, you know?
The number of times I've
Especially,
listened to that before sports things in my life is 1,000. So yeah.
oh, I've listened to it
Yeah.
before going in court before. So
Oh,
to
fuck
argue.
yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Plug it into my veins.
so the measurable change, I think, in our city comes from public safety. Listen, I sat in the 911 call center in the city of Minneapolis recently. There's one guy that works in there. He's been there for 11 years. And they have mandatory overtime holds. Like you'll be there for 8 hours and they say, we're short staffed. You need to stay for 4 more hours. In the 11 years that he has worked there, he has worked 5 years of overtime. So he's worked there over 16 years in the 11 years that he's been there, which is wild. And that's just the 911 call center. And you know why I was in there? Because my car was stolen from in front of my house. And when I called 911, it rang for 2 minutes. And I made a social media post about it. It was like, my car was taken and I was standing here on hold, not even on hold. It was ringing for 2 minutes. And then they reached out to me. Were like, thanks for like bringing this to light. We're really short staffed over here. And then I went and sat in there for 2 hours and watched how short staffed they were. And then guess what? It didn't stop there. It also moves to when you call 911 now in the city of Minneapolis, we have a mental health response team called the BCR.
Nice.
BCR can go to those calls instead of police officers. And we're short there too. And I was like, gosh, I have to learn about why we're short over at the BCR. So I did a ride along with them. And when I'm riding along with them and seeing them go to calls that otherwise a officer with a gun would go to, when there's a high school student that was contemplating harming herself and they could call 911 and they would go instead of the police, but they're wildly understaffed as well. And we need more of the BCR team within the city of Minneapolis. Those are things I want to step in and bolster immediately when I come into public office, because guess what? That also alleviates the things that we're asking officers to do. We take 50 things that we ask police to do and make it a lot less, and then they can do those more effectively and reduce the amount of exposure they have to things that could go wrong that they shouldn't be answering in the first place. They don't even feel qualified to answer some of those calls. So why would we put them in that position?
Jazz, I admire you for 1,000 reasons besides terrible taste in movies like me. But it's very easy to start pulling the string on the sweater of some of these issues and realize, holy shit, this goes so much deeper than this little bill I was trying to get across the line. Or how do I just hire more mental health professionals for this amazing thing you've got set up? But by the way, most cities would kill for, which is great, which is that we had some mental health professionals. We have burned most of them out. We don't graduate that many. It's inaccessible, unaffordable, so people both can't access it, can't have the conversations. Men, definitely not. And so where are you going to hire them from to work for the city? It's very easy to get scared off by that and go, I'm going to go back to my books now. How do you handle that? Because it doesn't stop.
Here's the good news of the silver lining from my perspective. A lot of the solutions to one problem can also come by solving another. Right. So if there are high school students that are struggling to graduate and they're getting into activities that are not helpful to their future careers or lives, showing them from like a hierarchy of needs standpoint that if you just look up for the broken glass that's in front of you, although you're walking barefoot, here's the opportunity that we can present to you in this situation with those students that are struggling to graduate from high school. If we can say, hey, in 2.5 or 3 years, you can be a BCR responder or a public safety officer, and you can do this and you'll be making $90,000 when you start. You just have to make it through this program, which we can guide you into straight out of high school. Here's how we can get you there. And then guess what? You're improving the graduation rates. You're improving the amount of people that not only are from here, but also then can be a part of public safety here. And you're improving the amount of people and resources we have responding to these mental health calls. You're addressing multiple things in one. Sometimes even, and this is a hot take, people talk a lot about the pool of potential officers because we're struggling. We had 900 officers before 2020, and for most of this year, we've been under 600. So we're struggling to hire officers. The pool is this big, but we also want the people to be from Minneapolis or live in Minneapolis. Then that will constrict the pool of people. because not that many people would live here or are willing to. But if you say, well, we'll give you an extra $6,000 or a housing voucher for the first 2 years if you do move to the city, now you're expanding the pool of potentials. You're both getting more officers and getting more that would live in the city. That's the whole point. We have to work on creative solutions that address more than one things, because listen, we can't just have one person out there trying to do it all. We need to pool some of the goals into one solution.
I love it, man. Multi-solving, co-benefits, whatever you want to call it. They're some of my favorite examples. It's a really great reason to have all these systemic problems, is that it turns around.
Right.
They're all like fully linked together. But by the way, you could have replaced mental health professionals in your comment there with electricians, with plumbers,
Yes.
with all these
Yes.
different people, nurses, by God, that we are just unfathomably short on for, again, 1,000 different reasons that you can start pulling the string on and go, oh, well, most nurses don't want to teach because they make more in the field than they do in academia. So you need teachers to teach more nurses to be nurses. It's a whole thing, right? We'd do that all day. But like you said, you tell some sophomore who doesn't, understandably, like you said, walking on glass, doesn't see a light at the end of the tunnel, any way out of the tunnel, maybe considering they're harming themselves because God knows teen mental health is a nightmare. And you say, buddy, you can own an electrician business,
Yes.
work for yourself in 4 to 6 years, zero debt, and you're not going to get replaced by AI, any of this stuff. And we desperately need you. Your schedule will be booked morning to night. No questions asked. And then we all benefit from that, obviously, right? Because guess what? We got to build 4 million new houses. So
I was
congratulations.
just going to say, we have an incredible housing shortage in the city of Minneapolis.
Yeah,
So-
it's wild, man. This is all fantastic. I really appreciate it. Again, I think you and I could have a much longer conversation, which I would love to do at some point, but you
For
got
sure.
things to do. It's fine. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
Last 2 questions. A book you'd recommend. This could be anything. Book you read to your kids or nonfiction or dragons. You tell me.
One of the books that I've read recently that I really enjoyed was a book called Die with Nothing.
That's a good one.
And I think it's good. Like, disclaimer, this is not like a book for someone that's still trying to pick themselves up by the bootstraps. But the general thesis, it sounds like a little crazy, like it's a spendthrift book. But if I had to just summarize a few points, it's like, well, if you're going to die at 80 and you're waiting to give your kids their inheritance until you die, they're going to be 60. And that's not when they need it. And you can enjoy watching them use their inheritance if you're already gone. So if you have an inheritance at 50, give it to your kids when they're 30, when they really need it right now. And they can buy a house and start building a foundation, and give it to the nonprofit organizations that you love so you can see the benefit. And the sooner they get the dollars, the sooner they can deliver services. Like, that's the theory, right? If you have the ability to give, do it now. And also, to the other end of it, experiences. You know what? I was a lot more willing to spend time in a hostel when I was 23 years old. And I was more comfortable taking my shirt off at the beach as well. And so stay in the crappy place and do the thing and have the experience, because when you're 40, you're not going to want to take off your shirt and you're not going to want to stay in the hostel. So just do it now, you know? And I really appreciated that perspective.
I love it. And again, even if you don't read it, you can read into that philosophy a lot of different ways. But like you said, one of my questions, I just talked about this with the gentleman from Missouri I had on the phone earlier, but you know, when I have these offline conversations or emails or whatever with folks who are maybe a little wealthier and they're interested in this idea of what can I do? And my first thing is, do not start your own foundation. Please do not do that, because there's so many incredible people on the ground doing the thing. But 2 is go to them and say, what is it for? What is your time for? And what is this money for? Because if you're willing to put it out there and to do the math, and there's 1,000 calculators you can figure out online, or hire somebody who's good. Like you said, if you give it to these nonprofits, to these candidates even, guess what? You might not, you don't get a tax write-off. Sorry, but your town might not have active shooters much anymore, which is a win. That's a return on investment. You can watch those happen. And you know what? If that needs to be like a selfish thing for you, I'm fine with that. Because just waiting 50 years to dump it all on somebody, first of all, like, we need the help now. And that help compounds just like problems do. So yeah, that is usually how I read it to folks, which is, well, what are you doing here? Let's do it. The clock's ticking. Awesome. What do you need in the last, oh my God, like hours of your campaign here?
7 days left. Donations are, of course, always great. In Minneapolis, we have a max of $1,000 per person. So you can't
That's
give
great for you
unlimited.
guys.
Yes, it's good for us. Donations are always great. And then also, if you're just willing to volunteer, we do like text banking and phone banking, so you don't have to be here as well. And then, beyond me, just help someone in your local election. If you're helping others doing the work locally, especially folks that are endorsed by Run for Something, I love that.
I love it. That's awesome. Last one. I forgot about this. This is my new question. What's a playlist you can't get enough of right now?
Oh, Chance the Rapper's new album. I can't get
Okay.
enough of it. It's really great. There's a song called Letters, which I think is great. The intro song Slide, and Tree is also good. It's about how marijuana, like the perception has changed so much, but also it hasn't changed that much at the same time.
That sums it up.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's
I
my
similarly
go-to.
had on the Clips album, because Virginia guy, the first track about their parents. I was like, well, I'll just sit in my car and cry now.
Okay.
So,
And I guess I'll know what I'm doing for the rest of the day.
it's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. As thank you so much for your time. Good luck. That's it. You can read our critically acclaimed newsletter and get notified about new podcast conversations at importantnotimportant.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for giving a shit.